This is Spring Washam, and I'm on Your Superior Self.
What is going on, Superior Nation? Welcome back. I missed you. I feel like we haven't spoken in forever. This is Your Superior Self, and I am your talented host, Trey Downs. Talented in the fact that I just read way too many books and go down too many rabbit holes, and I'm obsessed with so many different topics, and I love to bring you my audience, people that inspire me and people that I find fascinating, like today's guest, Spring Washam. She is, I don't know what to say. She goes on like 3-month retreats, and these retreats are like silent retreats where you don't speak or anything like that. And I don't even know what kind of source of energy you plug into when you go do that. But I don't even know if I could do 3 minutes. Maybe I could probably do 3 minutes. 3 hours though? I don't know if I could do 3 hours though. Silent. I feel like my mind would just collapse in on itself. But Spring, she does some crazy stuff like that. And that's why I love talking to her. I mean, she is a teacher of meditation and Dharma. She wrote the book, A Fierce Heart, Finding Strength, Courage, and Wisdom in Any Moment. And I read that book in like 3 days. Seriously. I was sent the PDF to kind of research her before the show, and I couldn't put it down. Just because of the series of events that unfolded, one, are just something that I'm not accustomed to. Like, I don't want to give away the book, but I found it empowering for my life because some of the situations that she went through and how she overcame them, and it gave me a new perspective on life. Seriously. I want to know how she continuously evolves. And this is why I brought her on the show, because she continuously betters herself and evolves her mindset through meditation, through Dharma practices. And I have a little clip for you right now. And this is like the biggest question that I wanted to ask her. I was like, what is her meditation practice, and how is she able to sit with her mind? And this is what she said.
So my practice is very much about mindfulness and resting in the present moment. So learning how to rest between the thoughts, between the stories we tell. There's sometimes a gap where the mind is quiet for about a second, and then another story is like, oh no. You know how the mind is. There's a gap called now, here. And every once in a while we fall into it naturally, like maybe in a beautiful view, or we're taking a walk in nature or something, and the mind gets quiet, and it's not playing the drama stories. It's like we turn the TV off for a moment, and then there's a gap. So my practice is about learning how to rest in that gap and expand that.
And I can't think of a better time than now to start working on your meditation practices. Listen to this episode. It gives a lot of great tips on how to meditate. There isn't like the right way to meditate. It's all in what works for you, essentially. But I find that this time right now is a great opportunity to like hone in my skills of meditation and try to reach a different level of consciousness and expand my consciousness. And if you guys have any questions about that, feel free to reach out and ask questions about my techniques and how I do it. You can do that by going to yoursuperiorself.com and leave me a message over there. But just to give you an update on the quarantine situation, I've been reading a ton of different books. Just started watching American Idol for the first time in 10 years. I don't know, however long that thing's been on, but we as a family usually watch The Voice or America's Got Talent. I love that show. Like, seriously, some of the craziest talents are on that show. But we figured, why not watch American Idol? I know it's something new. It's like season 18, but watch season 18, episode 1. They have the trash guy on there, where he works as a trash man, and he comes on and he sings. This is like his first experience ever. And like, if you don't love this guy after this episode, like, there's something wrong. Seriously. American Idol has me hooked right now just because of this guy. And like, I have this new respect for trash guys, like going around. I mean, I always did. They wake up early and they come out and pick up, especially my house. Like, we just have so much trash just from, especially now being in quarantine, everyone's home all the time. But this guy gets up so early and goes out and works his ass off for his family. And during this episode, that's what he talks about. He's like, yeah, I'm out here for my daughter, my wife. I'm trying to provide a better life for them. And you can't. He's so respectful too. He my favorite part is like, he sings, he does a really good job, and then like Katy Perry's like, I want to see your range, and he's like, I don't even know what that means. Like, I don't even know what that means. And then like at the very end, he's like, he does my favorite saying ever. He's like, yeah, buddy. Like, I feel like this is just, I don't know. I hope he doesn't get cut. If you haven't seen it, if you've seen this episode, if you've seen this season, don't tell me, because I don't want to know. No spoilers. But guys, I have an amazing episode for you here for you today. If you want to reach out on social media, you can do that on Facebook at Trey Downs, Instagram at TDowns80, Twitter at DownsTrey. I love hearing from you guys. I love just connecting and hearing your stories about what you guys are up to. How are you making yourself better? I love new ideas for new books. I'm reading a book currently right now, which is way out there, and I love it. It's a story of Edgar Casey. There is a river. Check it out. It is phenomenal. But I am excited about today's conversation, guys. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Spring Washam. Welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you.
How are you?
I'm great.
So I got your book, and it was a PDF, thank God. So I got it immediately in the mail, and I couldn't stop reading it. A Fierce Heart is amazing. Thank you for writing that.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy that you received it and that you like it. Yeah, you're welcome.
It's you open up a lot. It's very transparent.
Yeah, I didn't start off planning on writing such a book that had so much of my own biographical information. It was just going to be kind of a lot of teachings on different topics, but somewhere in the process, it kind of turned. And yeah, so there we go. Yeah, nothing really left out now. It's all out there.
Well, at some point you got to feel, a lot of release too. Like your story's out there. There's, I don't know where you're at in your life or what's going on, but it's got to feel good to like just get it out there and not have to hide from anything, right?
Yeah, and even the things that are in there, I really feel like I grew from those experiences. So I write about them in a way that others can relate to my experiences or some aspect of their own life, and how, we can grow from those experiences, not kind of feel ashamed or get stuck. So yeah, maybe there was a certain freedom of being like, here it is, and this is what I'm working with, and this is what I learned about the experiences.
Yeah, it's powerful. I think I'm quoting you here. You said, darkest times I grew the most, which is pretty powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people see the dark times as just that, dark times, right? Like they don't think about the actual lesson that's hidden in that dark time. Yeah, it's powerful. Like my notes right now are just all over the place because I was reading it and like scratching. Like I could have talked about the entire book tonight if we had enough time. But so you start out. You're in California, right? West Coast in the book.
Yes.
And you talk about your growing up and your mom and your father, or your father figure. I think it's your stepdad. I cannot remember that part of the book. And you talk about that. Like, how was that growing up for you?
Well, when I grew up, my parents split up early on. My father had a lot of emotional issues and drug issues. So she was a single parent a lot, but then she had different husbands. And so there was always a lot of, to be nice about it, really challenging. Everybody was just suffering. And there was no wisdom in that. So therefore, she married a man who was kind of, well, definitely abusive. And so I had to leave her house at an early age. So I left when I was 15 and have an older sister who left shortly after she graduated from high school. And it was hard,
I can
you
imagine. Like,
don't,
I can't
yeah.
imagine like the mental. Like, all right, so like growing up in a middle class family. Like, definitely when I hear stories like this, it makes me feel more appreciative, right? Like, I can't put myself in your shoes, but like you have to. I guess you're 15 and you experience that stuff. Like, you're in a different mental state than most people.
Yeah, you are. And it's not a very evolved one. You still have a 15-year-old mind, hence all the trauma I accrued because you're not, making good decisions and you're reacting from your emotion and your hurt. But luckily, I was very mature. And as I got into my late teens, I started to become very awake and aware and much more stable, and started to really study and go back to school and really got into looking at psychology and trying to understand the mind. So this other part of me kind of kicked in. So on some level, I could say I was really, really mature. But still, 15 is 15. You don't know a lot.
Yeah. Well, so 15. Where do you go next? You go to Oakland, right? And that's when all the different things start happening. The drug abuse, right? Like you were working at some place at a timeshare where you sold timeshares and drugs were involved and it's crazy.
Well, yeah, there's a few things that are getting going together there, but yeah, I spent a lot of time between Northern California and Southern California. So we would go back and forth every few years, and it's only 400 miles apart, but yeah, at one point I'm selling timeshare, and that was kind of when I had my breakdown. And it's so funny because I was with a friend of mine the other night who had read my book for the first time, like a week before we were meeting up after a long time apart. And he said, "Man, your book is full of breakdowns." And I didn't really realize that. I was like, "Yeah, but those are my breakthroughs." So
Mm,
yes, there was a period right before I kind of really changed my life in a way where, yeah, things were falling apart, and I was working at a timeshare and smoking weed and depressed and trying to teach myself meditation. And then I end up out of all that going on this retreat and meeting my teacher and really transforming my life from there. Just, yeah, my first retreat.
that first retreat, it was like a 10-day retreat, right?
Yeah, it's a 10-day Vipassana style retreat.
Now, what
And
is
not
that?
everybody. Yeah, Vipassana, I was just going to say that's not probably a word that a lot of people know. Vipassana is a word that just means clear seeing. And it's a type of meditation that we refer to as insight meditation, where you're learning how to use the present moment, the experience of resting in the present moment. It comes from the Buddhist tradition. Mindfulness also is associated with that, mindfulness, awareness. Um, so I went to a 10-day retreat, and then in that 10 days, I had a huge breakthrough, right? With
Mm,
working with my mind. I started to be like, okay, my mind is crazy, but I'm learning here. It's sort of like my mini awakening experience I had during that 10 days.
that's where you learn how to meditate.
Yes, that's where I learned how to meditate because I was always very interested in meditation, and I had tried for years to teach myself through reading books. I mean, you got to think about this. This was over 20 years ago. So there wasn't all the apps. YouTube didn't exist. There was a small section of books. I didn't even have a cell phone on my first retreat, so there wasn't all this information like we have now about practice. And so I was trying to teach myself prior to that. Interestingly enough, when during my life, I always knew that somehow all of this suffering has something to do with my mind and other people's minds. I knew it. I was like, it's a thinking problem. I kept telling myself, there's something wrong with how I'm thinking. And when I was, so that led me to become interested in meditation because I was really curious about understanding why there was so much suffering, why people were crying, why there was addiction, like why is everyone's minds um, so upset or disturbed? So I was really interested in looking at my mind. So that led me very naturally into wanting to meditate.
Like when you say everyone, is like everyone that was surrounding you, or somebody at the retreat, or what do you mean by everyone?
Well, at that time, I meant everyone in my life, all
Mm.
the adults, the people around me, they were just, so emotional. Or, you have to think about this as inner city areas. People were angry. There was a lot of hurt. People were making decisions and suffering the consequences of those decisions. So I was extremely empathetic, empathic, and I was always observing the people around me because I was really trying to understand what is this human life about? Is it just pain and are people just hurting each other? And, so I was extremely philosophical and I would ask adults around me, but they didn't really know how to respond. It's kind of like life's a bitch, then you die.
Mm.
It's kind of
Yeah.
that philosophy. And I was like, no, there's got to be more than this. That would be
Well,
cruel.
it's tough, like when you have that like a little nudge towards awakening, right? Like you
Yeah.
try to speak about your experiences, especially meditation or spirituality, and people just don't understand. Like they're like, they're just so you know used to the programming from their childhoods, or their other influences in their lives, where they don't understand where you're coming from. So like you talk about meditation, and they're kind of like, what? You're doing what? Meditation? Why? Are you sitting? Why are you? You could be doing other things too. Like it's just they don't understand it.
Yeah, I agree. Or they even feel worse about it, like it's dangerous.
Mm.
Like you could be harmed by sitting quietly, with your mind. And I was like, but wait, there's way more going on than me trying to sit quietly and observe my thoughts. So that was it. I was really seeking wisdom and wise beings. I would pray for that. Like, may I meet people who could help me understand what's going on. And luckily, it all started to happen during that retreat, my first retreat, and then after.
What? How do you meditate now?
Okay, so when I meditate, I usually sit down in a chair, or I like to sit on the floor in cross-legged position, but that's not comfortable for everyone. So, find a nice chair, sit comfortably. And I do a very simple practice, usually of just following my breath. So I put my awareness in my belly. And this is like what I do in the beginning to kind of calm my mind down, right? So because when we first try to meditate, the mind is just buzzing. We call it monkey mind, right? It has a mind of its own. It's like this
Mm.
thought, that thought, da, 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 da. And often we don't want to meditate. There's resistance to stillness, right? In the beginning. Um, and so I just sit down and I sit quietly and I follow my breath and I feel the rhythm of my breath in my belly. And I feel the body and sensation. And I allow that to be a place of developing concentration. So when my mind starts to wander, like, oh my God, what's going to happen tomorrow? I come back thinking, I note thinking, come back to the feeling of the breath, the body, the sounds. So my practice is very much about mindfulness and resting in the present moment. So learning how to rest between the thoughts,
Mm.
between the stories we tell, there's sometimes a gap where the mind is quiet for about a second. And then another story is like, oh no, 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 no. You know how the mind is. But there's a gap called now, here. And every once in a while we fall into it naturally, like maybe in a beautiful view, or we're taking a walk in nature or something, and the mind gets quiet and it's not playing the drama stories. It's like we turn the TV off for a moment and then there's a gap.
Mm.
So my practice is about learning how to rest in that gap and expand that. And there's a lot of peace and happiness that can come out of that kind of practice of stillness.
Mm. Is that is that becoming aware? Is that what awareness is? Is like when you start to be able to meditate. Is that what they mean by awareness?
Yeah, that's the exactly what we're doing with awareness is it's like a muscle. Awareness and mindfulness are like a muscle that you cultivate. The more you practice being aware, so when we're sitting in the present moment, we're aware of the breath, we're aware of the sounds around us, we're aware when the mind gets pulled off into a story of maybe I'm in the fourth grade and someone pulls my hair, right? I can get lost in that. We're aware, thinking, and then we come back, right? So what we're doing when we're learning how to meditate is we're sort of developing this muscle of awareness. So instead of being lost in the drama of the mind every moment, I mean, it would be different if the mind was telling beautiful stories, but it's not. Most of it is a nightmare. Even when we're in a beautiful home that's safe, we can start thinking all kinds of really destructive thoughts. Our
Mm-hmm.
minds are the creator of the world in some way,
Hmm.
right? We believe things are happening. We project onto others, this person, that person. Oh my God, the people in another country, this. And we live in a state of a lot of fear and terror just by lack of awareness of what we're thinking. We're just not understanding how the thoughts impact our emotion and our body. So yes, so awareness is really powerful because when it's really cultivated, it kind of imagine it's like a traffic cop or something, like it's going, no, no, don't go there. You've already gone down that road. Remember? Like, oh, right. Stay the course, right? And then it's like you start to dwindle, you go wander down another road of past drama. No, don't need to go there. We've already, that's dead end. Right. So the mind starts to become more contented, not lost in the drama, but present. Right. We was like, oh, I've already watched those TV stations. Do I really need to look at it again? Right.
Yeah.
Because it's painful.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's the mind protecting the self, right? Like the more aware you become to what we truly are, the mind needs to protect itself, the ego, the false self, so it does everything that it can to like try to distract us, to try to throw some negativity in there. That way, we doubt ourselves and doubt who we really are. Like
Yes.
in your book, you say to remember who we are, and what do you mean by who we are? Like what is that? What is the definition of that?
Yeah, well, I think it's exactly what you were just saying. Like the egoic part of the mind loves to create the drama, and it loves to have wars, right? It loves to fight. It loves to be, you're there, I'm here, I'm better, you're not, all day. And then it does distract us from our true self and our real reason for being here, right? And all the things that we could accomplish and all the joy that we could create. So when I talk about, our true self, I do believe at everybody's core that there is infinite compassion, wisdom, and intelligence, right? That we're so much bigger than we know. But there's all these layers obscuring it, right? And the path of healing or the path of awakening, if you want to call it that, or the path of understanding or self-realization is seeing that nature. And I do believe that it's goodness. A lot of people may debate me on that and say at people's core, it's wicked, and that's a lot of church and a lot of religious sort of programming that at our core we're bad. But I believe the opposite. I believe that people's core nature is innate goodness. It's just we have habits, we have programming, and there's a level of understanding that we're just not connected to. So I believe our true nature is, light,
Mm.
beauty, goodness.
Yeah, I actually got into an argument, not an argument, but an interesting conversation with a friend about that. Like we were talking about the percentage of good people in the world, and I was like, I think it's like 80-20. I think that 80% of the world are good people, and the 20% obviously are the ones that have issues. And he was like, no, it's more like 50-50. I'm like, I don't think so. I think people are ultimately good, have good hearts. I think that experiences and people's stories are different, and they come away with different I don't know, learnings, or it depends on where where you're from. I hate to say it, but like Baltimore, I'm from Baltimore. Like the Baltimore City
Mm.
kids, that are growing up are definitely different than the county kids, and they're having different experiences. Does it mean that they're bad? No, it's just I believe that we come in this world, pure, right? Like,
Mhm.
you can't tell me that these little kids are evil. They're not. It's just their situation, their experiences that kind of mold them into what they're going to be. And I think that everyone, I mean, I think it's more than 80%, but I just said 80-20 just to, hurry up the argument. Um, but yeah, I believe that, what you're doing, what your mission is, and what the book is right on target. Like, I think, you talk about, man, you definitely had a lot of breakdowns, but you definitely worked through them, and you did things that are different. Like, you did a 3-month silent retreat, which blows my mind. Like, how do you even do that?
A day at a time. A day at a time. You don't you just get into a flow too. And I think, and I want to also agree with you that I think it's like more like 90-10 or 95 that are, because people forget that they could go through the day and experience all kinds of kindness.
Hmm.
Go to the doctor and the nurse is like, hi, like we get used to having, or someone smiles or we have a beautiful relationship or, someone makes us a nice dinner. Like if you really look around, there's like all this kindness. And it also emanates from our own heart and mind. When we're really open, we're attracting those experiences,
Hmm.
we're emanating that, so I agree with you. And, yeah, too bad that those, stories aren't more in the forefront right now. All the beautiful things that humans are doing all over the world. It's a lot of negative is in the headlines right now. But yeah, 3-month retreat. But here's the thing about a 3-month retreat. People are not used to thinking that there's another, when you're on these long retreats, you're tapping into this kind of higher self, right? Naturally, you're learning how to rest in it. And it's very sustainable and very joyful at times,
Hmm.
right? You're feeling this, you're out of the matrix, and you're like, yay, and it's all gonna come back, right? You're gonna go home and there's your Instagram and your kids and your job, but you're learning how to tap into another part of the mind. You're learning how to be fed a different kind of food. I don't know. I never use that analogy, but that's what's coming right now,
Hmm.
you know.
No, I
So,
mean, a different kind of food. Like that is true. Like, all right, so it if like you change your diet right now, like if any diet, right? Like depending on what, if you're eating healthy or eating bad, like if you change it up, it's going to affect you, right? Like, but you're gonna feel different. So you might get different interpretations of things, different meanings, right? Like, so you go on a 3 month,
hmm
silent retreat. Yeah, things are going to come up. And I
hmm
wasn't a big believer in that. Like, I heard that before. Like, things will come up when you do certain things. I'm like, what are you talking about? Things will come up. No, they're not going to come up. Well, it was like last week I went to um, an event, and it was after the event that they did like a gong therapy, not a gong meditation or something like that, where you sit in front of a gong and they beat it and you feel the
mm
vibrations, and it's
hmm
pretty intense. And
Yeah, I've done that.
it's crazy. Like, you hear different sounds, and it's like it messes with your hearing, because at one point it doesn't even sound like a gong to me anymore because it goes so high up. And then as they go through the first round of gongs, right? So, and then they kind of separate it with like little bells. So they walk behind you with bells and behind your ears, I guess, to kind of reset everything. And it was during that she was like, she literally said at the very beginning, she was like, be careful, because 3 days after this, something might come up. And I'm like, all right, what are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking
Mm.
about. I just went with it, and like, she's going by with the little bells, and it's like, I started feeling something. I was like, what is going, like, I'm feeling something from the past. It like reminded me of a memory of a childhood with like wind chimes or something like that. Like I felt
Mm.
something from the past, and like tears started coming down my eyes. I'm like, I don't know what's going on right now. Like, but I'm a believer. Like, you said something will come up. I don't know what's coming up right now. Like my immediate instinct was like, Mom, where are you? Like, I don't know. Like, it just was weird. Like, I don't know. And it's crazy because I was reading your book too, and you're talking about the underworld section, right? Like the underworld is what we, you basically related to what we can't see. It's like the unconscious, right? It's like the
Hmm.
subconscious, unconscious, whatever. Like the underworld is the dark part. Like, and I totally get it. Like it definitely makes sense to me when I can relate it to that, because it's like something was coming up in that meditation ceremony. I don't know what it was, and it was definitely coming from like the underworld part where it was like unconscious. Like, it's nuts. It's how you experience something and you read your book, A Fierce Heart, and now it totally makes sense.
Oh, well, that's good. Yeah. And and as you're, experiencing those kind of things, that's a moment where you can just be aware, just feel it. Just feel the energy, let the tears flow. Like in those moments, we try to like not shut it down or analyze too much. We just feel it, like allow these energies of, it could be a deep sorrow or a fear or a memory of, yeah, our mother in the kitchen, or we are energetic beings, and we have all these memories and sense impressions, millions of them, buried inside of us. And they're both a mix of really beautiful ones, like, the wind chimes on a sunny day with our mom or something. And suddenly, the world is all fine and we have a sense impression and it gets lodged in us. And also then we have all the ones that are really hurtful, and they're all stored in there. And at certain moments when we're softening and we're willing to say, okay, I'm going to allow these other experiences, they'll start to arise more and more because the body wants to let go of them.
Mm. Yeah, no, it's just crazy how like we don't realize the memories that we have at some point. Like they're so ingrained in our DNA, like that
Yes.
sometimes we suppress it and it goes away, and then you don't even, you forget about it, and then 15, 30 years later something comes up and you're like, what the hell is going on? Like, because you totally forget
Right.
about it, right? But like you said, the body wants to you know get release that energy. I mean, have you ever been like that? Like, have you ever gotten into like a meditation or like not therapy session, but like a retreat, and something came out of nowhere, like just blindsided you?
Oh, all the time. Oh, yeah. I mean, I talk about in one of the chapters in the book about compassion. I was on a 3-month retreat in a cabin, and all this grief started to come, and it was so intense, and I didn't know where it was coming from. I didn't even understand it. It was like some kind of grief that I had never experienced in my life. But because I had a lot of practice with meditation and I understood, okay, sometimes this stuff just needs to unwind. Okay. But prior to that, I did start to feel 6 months prior to this big, real cathartic retreat I had. I felt the heaviness in my heart. There was like a sorrow that was like, it was like sun was rising. It was like a sorrow was, it was already kind of, we can feel these energies blow in when we become more sensitive and awake. Like long before that moment, it's like something stirring in the heart.
Mm.
So it's, and I think for a lot of your listeners are people who are, working in different situations and want to learn about meditation. We're on the beginning of understanding our minds, right? As a culture, we're only at the very beginning of going, okay, how does the brain, how does the mind, how does the heart work? So we're just opening up, but there's a whole world of mystery. I mean, I could say a lot of things, but for this moment, we'll just, stay with what's important in this moment. But yeah, if you continue to allow yourself to be open, you could have many experiences in meditation with sound, not in nature. we're only using a very small percent of the mind. We're only aware of a very small percent. There's like, a whole realm, 5,000 realm mansion, and we're still like kind of in the basement of it,
No,
you know.
I agree. I think that this is going to be like, with the research in neuroscience and, what Johns Hopkins is doing with psychedelics. I think that we're right on that tipping
Yes.
point of really understanding how the mind works, like, or at least, I don't know. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's definitely a new era, I think 2020 is like a new cycle is
Mm,
opening just in exploring that we are so much more than this limited sense of self. We're more than the
yeah.
body,
Yeah. Well, see, I've
we're
been
we're
I've been
vast.
so into this, right? Like I'm so into neuroscience and learning how to get into flow states. I'm a big fanboy of Stephen Kotler. Like I just love everything that he
Mhm.
does. His books, Stealing Fire, and his what has he got? The Flow Genome Project. Like I always follow his articles over there, but just getting in different state of minds and different states of consciousness to help like with creativity, with the podcast, and in life, and then my boy Sean Webb just wrote a book called Mind Hacking Happiness, and he talks about his experience with enlightenment. Like he was meditating, and he does like a Zen-based meditation where he tries to silence, have zero thoughts, and he had an experience. He had an enlightenment experience where he left his body, and
Mm.
he went into the universe, and he experienced all of that greatness. And what's funny though is like I 100%, I believe him. Like some people are kind of like hesitant, like, what are you talking about? Like, but I've read a couple of books on near-death experiences, like NDEs, and a lot of the structures of the stories, like the things that happen, are very similar to his experience. So like I'm kind of like, that sounds very similar, right? Like he hears
Hmm.
this vibration, he leaves his body, and then he immediately enters like extreme joy, like extreme happiness. And like he hears, like there is no like his consciousness. Like he is just a consciousness in the universe, and he experiences God, and God is his consciousness, and it's not like something you don't speak with lips. It's like speaking non-verbally, right? Like he can understand everything, and he goes and he travels across the world, and he experiences like a horrific scene, and he totally feels love for both the victim and the person that's committing the crime, because we're all this. He's trying to say that we're all connected in this universal consciousness, and it was a beautiful story, and it's just like, man, it's like powerful. Like that's what I'm starting to realize a little bit more. Like I'm becoming more aware. Like I'm having like a
Hmm.
small, like I'm at the tipping point of some type of enlightenment where like I can't get enough. I don't know if that's happened to you.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think and I love that. That sounds like an amazing book. I'm gonna have to check it out. And I love that people are writing about these stories. And I just tell listeners and readers, you don't have to believe it, but just you don't have to not believe it either. You
Yeah,
know what
yeah.
I mean?
Open
Just
mind. Got to
kind
keep
of
an open
be in
mind.
an open state. Yeah, like wow, there's a lot of and because I grew up around reading, I would study the text of a lot of Hindu masters, Tibetan masters, meditation teachers. I was really lucky. I was attracted to it, and I think in some ways they were the same stories that you're reading now, right? The
Mm.
kind of
Mm-hmm.
modern. That's like a
Mm-hmm.
modern take on a classic yogic experience of somebody, having this really profound awakening experience and seeing reality in a way.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I'm so passionate about that. And I feel like I'm forever learning and it's humbling because I feel like I grow all the time. And what I know now, and even 6 months ago, I laugh like, wow.
Really? It's like
There's,
that? Like you're just at different levels
yeah.
of enlightenment or education, like every 6 months or so?
Well, I can track it because I'm working on a second book right now,
Mm.
and I can look at what I'm writing, and I can come back to something that I wrote that I believed wholeheartedly, I wrote with like a lot of passion even 3, 6 months ago, and I laugh a little bit now at that because I
What has
see
changed
where
for you though?
it's like it's not deep enough.
Mm,
Like, oh, I know more about that now. I see more. It's hard to
for sure.
explain, but I will say that it's an acceleration that's happening. People's experience, like people who are like just at the beginning of these different levels of awareness and understanding, it's moving faster for people. So it's speeding up. Like all of a sudden, you might say like, oh my God, a year ago, maybe you weren't even into that. And now
Mm,
suddenly you can't get enough. That's the kind of acceleration I mean, right? It's
mm.
like, whoa, I'm so passionate about these topics and these experiences and these understandings. Um, yeah, yeah. And we're all growing. And I'm still very humbled at what I don't know, too, because I laugh when I do realize something. I go, oh my God, how was I living with that? Being so delusional, right? And I just, laugh and go, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So.
Do you have you experienced that though, like meditation wise? Have you ever experienced like the enlightenment, the higher consciousness? Like, not, I mean, maybe leaving your body. I don't know, but have you experienced anything like that?
Yeah, I've had a lot of meditation experiences that have been really profound. And I've had a lot of experiences that have been very profound with my organization in Peru, where
Hmm.
I've been similar to the work at John Hopkins. I work with plants there in the jungle. So I've had many experiences working in that. And yeah, and a lot when I have been on very intense retreat and meditating for many hours. You experience all kinds of phenomena because you realize that you're more than your body. You're like, oh, and that's what's so funny about it, how we
Mm.
can get so attached to this kind of uh, conventional reality, which is very important, right? Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
it's the human body, right? Like the human body needs to put things in perspective for itself. Like it can't.
yeah.
Like it's just we have human emotions. We have two brains. We got the monkey brain and the elephant, right? Like, and they don't understand. They don't want to understand what the true self is. They don't want that. They try to do everything they can to not create that. But you talk about plant based. Obviously, we're talking about what's DMT or not, or man, what is it that they use in Peru? It's the
Ayahuasca.
ayahuasca. Yeah, so the ayahuasca ceremonies, the cleansing, shamans. It's a big ordeal, right? Like I mean, it's a big ritual.
Well, it is, yeah, working with, what when we're in those areas. I mean, all of this exploration for me had one purpose in mind, and that was like, how do I make sense of all this pain? You know, I only had one desire as a young person, and still now it's like, how do I become more happy, and how do I help others reduce their suffering?
Mm,
How do we get free of all this pain?
sure,
Like, oh my gosh. So,
but to
so
be in
working with,
pain, like that suffering,
mhm,
right? Like they're like you got to feel that
mhm.
pain to clean it, right? Like the filter, like the filter the pain, you got to feel it.
Yeah, exactly. And but there's a funny quote. I love this quote by this Thai forest master, Ajahn Chah. He used to say there's the pain that leads to the end of suffering, and there's the pain that leads to more suffering.
Oh,
Right? I don't want to lead to more suffering, and I would see
mm,
people doing things, trying to be happy, but doing terrible things that were going to lead to unhappiness. So a lot of this is getting out of that mind state of going just in the tangle
mm.
and just going around and around doing the same things, creating misery, suffering the misery, doing it again. So for me, I was interested in solving that issue. How do I move in a way that I'm creating happiness? I'm planting the seeds of happiness. So working with plants, can be a great way for people who have trauma, and they can't seem to break these cycles of painful thinking and action and habits. Our habits in our mind, as you know, man, they're compelling, and we get stuck in them and we act them out over and over, and they don't bring us happiness. They're just suffering, So we're learning about that. But there is a certain amount for sure that you have to feel as you're moving toward more awareness. You're letting go, but you're not creating more. I think that's really key.
Well, you said people, go towards the bad suffering, right? Like, what are they like? You're talking about like addiction and bad relationships and things of that nature. Is that what you're talking about, like the bad suffering?
Yeah, well, it could be that, of course, or it can be how they respond to their emotions. A lot of people don't know how to work with their emotions intelligently, and they create a lot of negativity by acting them out. Right. So someone gets angry one morning, instead of becoming aware and learning how to release that anger or feel it and let it move, they may go in and they hit their child, or they yell or go online and curse everyone out, or scream at their neighbors, or worse, right? Become abusive people. So a lot of our negativity comes from not knowing how to deal with our emotions, right? Or someone feels lonely, instead of dealing with the loneliness, maybe they, go do something they don't really want to do, or addictions of all kinds. Addictions not just, as we
Sure.
know, the mind, addicts. We're all addicts in some way. We have our addictions.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people's negativity comes from not knowing how to deal with their emotions and allowing that to be enacted out on all the beings around them.
So, your is it a foundation Lotus Find Journey that's in Peru, right?
Yeah, Lotus Mind Journeys. So I created two organizations. One was a meditation center called East Bay Meditation Center in downtown Oakland, which I love. And it's a donation based. Anybody can walk in and learn to practice and meditate. It's all by offering. So there is no charges. This beautiful community going strong. And then I started to want to work deeper with helping people, because when I was working in downtown Oakland, I met so many people. That's really what inspired me to write the book, is I heard so many stories, oh my gosh, of heartbreak and freedom and love and loss, and heroes and heroines, and people showing up for others in the darkest times. And I started to get very interested also in trauma, my own and historical trauma, and how to understand working with energy, because I also feel that I'm very much a healer, and meditation is a beautiful healing art, and yoga is a healing art, and all of these things are leading us in the direction of letting go. So I got interested in working with plants through a psychologist friend of mine who said this was really helping her in her healing journey. She had suffered a lot of really intense abuse as a child, as many have. So I started to visit and go to Peru, and I was always interested in Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine. So I started to learn about Amazonian medicine and the plants and the jungle and what was going on down there. And there's a lot of things happening down there that are interesting, and we're learning more about how medicinal plants, be it psilocybin mushroom, be it ayahuasca, or other plants that are really helping us as humans understand awareness and awake consciousness and what that means. So it's helping us, it's accelerating the levels of awareness and awakening. I really feel that that's really what these plants offer for those who are ready.
Yeah.
And it's right for. It's not right for everybody.
Yeah, it's not like a quick hack to enlightenment. It might bring up some shit. Like, it might bring up some
Yes.
stuff that
Oh, it will.
that you're not
Yeah,
ready
that's
for,
the.
and it can actually make it worse.
Well, it depends on where you are and on your healing journey. Like, if you're more at the beginning of it, it may not be that you have the capacity yet to kind of deal with trauma be with traumatic memories. So for some people, if it makes it worse, it's because maybe they're just not ready someone who's come out of a war zone. And I've worked with people who were in refugee camps, who were child soldiers. I've helped people who have suffered, cults and different things like that. And it has been very helpful. But you need to have a certain stability. So I think for most people, practicing meditation for a long time is a great, just do that, learning how to be present, working with a really good therapist, working on the body, learning how to be in the body is a much better start than just kind of, those are sort of advanced, at least ayahuasca. Psilocybin and what they're doing at John Hopkins, though, could be a great stepping stone for others. But there's a lot to say about that. But it's
Oh, yeah,
all
there's a
in,
ton.
yeah, there's a lot to say about that. And I think the main thing is that all of those plants are done in the spirit of healing, helping, and awakening to more joy and happiness and letting go of our pain and our traumas that we carry.
Yeah, I talked to a guy on the show, and I'm not going to say anything because his episode hasn't aired yet, and I'm excited for it. But he's a shaman down in Peru, and he does that, and I like the idea of how sacred it is, right? Like there's a whole ritual that goes behind it.
Yeah,
It's very sacred, and they don't take it lightly. Like you're not going on the side of the corner and getting a vial of ayahuasca and then going in the corner. I mean, it's a whole it could be a whole day of cleansing.
preparation. Yeah, yeah, very much. It's a whole, it's not like, our Western mind, it's very hard for us to understand this because we didn't grow up in those culture of ceremony or what does it mean to have a ceremony and to call in, you know, um, helpers and to go into different dimensions and stuff like that. So we don't grow up around that. So it's not our comfort, and we think maybe plant medicine as a drug. We're not understanding at all the power of it, and that's where people get hurt. Is they don't understand. They think maybe they're going to have fun, and they do something, and they're at Disneyland, and they get scared and overwhelmed, and it's traumatic. So this is the beautiful thing about working in indigenous communities. With earth people is the role of the creating the space, the ceremony, and honoring, Pachamama, the earth, honoring, it's a whole different level of just learning. So we in the West, we don't grow up with those rituals. We don't. A lot of these things have been lost, you
Mm.
know. So so
So,
yeah, there's
what
a
are you
lot to.
now, though, as far as spirituality? Are you Buddhist, or are you like what is your religious I guess your background. I don't think it states in the book, but can you tell us, fill us in on that?
Yeah, I think, if I was going to heavily identify myself with something, it would be that I follow the teachings of the Buddha and all the awakened masters. I study yogic philosophy. I love to work with yoga and pranayama. I study plants and from that perspective, and I love following the Christian mysticism and you know. And so I think in some ways I'm just a follower of truth. But if I do appreciate and follow a lot of the Buddhist um, ways of living, and it just really resonates with me, this sort of non-harming awareness, mindfulness, living with integrity and ethics, and a vow to be of service in this world.
Mm.
So the Dharma, the Buddha Dharma really speaks to me, and it's very open. I have friends of all different backgrounds, and as long as we connect around compassion and awareness, we can all meet there on that corner. There's something all traditions have. It's rather we follow that aspect or not. You know.
Yeah, I'm getting like entry level, like 101 into Buddhism, and trying to research that a little bit. But I definitely love the mindset of it. Like his quotes and sayings are legit. Like I really like it a lot. Like I don't know who said this, but like we were talking about it earlier, where like 6 months you look down the road and you're not the same person. Like there's a saying that I was listening to Aubrey Marcus speak, and he said something like, "It's like stepping in the you don't step in the same river twice because it's not the
Mm.
same river and you're not the same man."
Yes, isn't that a beautiful, exactly. And you probably can see that for yourself. How are you look back 2 years ago,
Yeah,
it's changing. We're all changing and people sometimes get afraid of that, but this is really what it's about. It's not about hanging on. It's about letting go and evolving. And that scares people. Sometimes spiritual awakenings can freak people out,
yeah, they're
and
scared of
they don't,
evolution, but they don't understand when
yeah.
they were in the embryonic sac, they had a tail. I'm just saying we evolve. That's what we do. It
Yeah.
isn't like I don't know. I feel like we're gonna hit a huge revolution. Coming out of we had the industrial revolution, technological revolution. Now we're gonna go into like the neuro. I don't know. We're gonna be in like this altered consciousness revolution. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting about that revolution, and it's very connected to Earth consciousness. The mind revolution filled with the green revolution are connected.
Mm,
So this return to kind of earthy ways, sustainability, connection, plant consciousness is definitely connected to this. So that I find that very interesting. They're both side by side, this kind of, and for people who don't want to evolve, they fight both of those aspects.
sure, sure.
They kind of, I don't want to know about my mind and I don't want to hear about the planet, like, no, no, we're going to
Yeah,
just
but then
try to,
they'll just,
you
they'll
know,
come back in another life and try to, they
they'll
won't,
have to go to class again.
yeah,
Yeah.
they'll live the same lives over and over again because they won't develop, they won't learn. Um, what has been like the most powerful experience that you've encountered so far?
The most powerful experience I've encountered in my life, you mean, or as far as like my spiritual
Your
practice?
spiritual
Or,
practice.
hmm. I really think it might be more. I know this is a newer phenomena, but I mean, I've had so many beautiful moments with people. They're always with people. It's never alone. It's always this experience of being in community. And this is something that has really awoke in me, or is awoke or wakening up,
That's
or
funny because I struggle with that too. I just say woke. I'm woke.
it woke up in me, or it's not just, it hasn't just happened once, it's like happening. So I was like awoken or awakening, or I'm understanding about it. But I think some of my most beautiful experiences or things that have meant a lot to me have come in the last couple of years on being in community and trying to grow a community and seeing how much, and it might be my time in Latin America, how there's such a different vibration there with family and community, and but it's deeper than that. It's not just being in that culture. It's the understanding of how much beautiful communities can work together for a cause, that actually we can help each other grow.
Mm,
In Buddhism, they call it Sangha.
mm-hmm.
The Buddha called it the Sangha, and the Sangha is like a jewel. And it means beloved community. And you know how people, when they're on the path, like if you're a monk or a nun, you live with other monks and nuns, right? If you're a neuroscientist, usually your community is what? A group of other neuroscientists, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you're all like,
Yeah.
it's like there's a power of growing that I've discovered in being with a community that we're on, that we're all in this together. We're sort of like trying to be like Jedis or something, like we're gotta work for the good, and that feeling, that connection and that common purpose, and bringing those other people together, like-minded people who care about humanity, and we want to serve and we want to grow and we want to put out things in the world that help others. I feel like my most magical moments have come being in that, and praying in those circles, or I don't know, something along that line lately that feels, I have a new appreciation for the beauty in community, and wanting my life, the second part of my life, to be really about cultivating that.
Mm. Yeah, that's crazy. I just heard somebody say the other day that they're at the point now where they want to love. It's how did he word it? He wants to love the second part of his life, or he's loving his second part of his life more than the first, or something like that. Like,
Mm,
it's pretty crazy.
yeah.
Have you ever experienced like, and this is just my fascination with it. Like, have you ever experienced like, the consciousness that is God?
Um, yeah, but it's hard to know because everybody's perspective on that would be so radically different. But I will say that I've had moments, and it's becoming more frequent as I sort of allow myself to grow, and I'm sort of clearing out more of the baggage, as we could say, that obstructs that feeling all the time, that connection all the time, right? We are that, right? But we don't feel it, right? So that's the problem. We don't feel it. We lose sight of it. So I do believe that in my own ways have experienced it, but I do believe also that there's more,
Mm,
that it's like glimpses,
mm.
like the window opens and I'm like, wow, and then it closes.
Oh,
And
that is
so
powerful.
I think there's a way that window, from what I hear, that is the awakened mind, is the window no longer closes.
Mm.
You you are that, and you're emanating that, and you're walking through the world as that, and there is no more internal mental obstruction.
But it's just to remember that, right? Like because we fall asleep so much, and
Oh, I know.
it
Yeah,
sucks. Like I hate it.
it does. It does.
Um,
It really does. I hear you on that. And we're tired of falling asleep because it's our true nature, that aspect. That is our real, that is our birthright. That is our self, or whatever. So I know it hurts. I agree with you. It's like falling down. You climb the mountain and then you're flung back down, an hour later and you're like, why?
exactly. Yeah, you need to. Sean Webb's his name, and Mind Hacking Happiness is his book. So it's like it's two volumes. It's like 1,500
Okay.
pages.
Wow. He was seriously downloading it, huh?
And you
That's,
have to listen to it audible. I don't know if you do audible books or not,
I
but
do.
oh my god, it is pretty good. It's helped me with this, right? It's like your
Good.
book. Like your book, after reading his, has helped me. Especially with his experiences and your meditation styles. And in your book, what really fascinates me is all the different retreats that you've been on, your story,
Mhm.
how vulnerable you are, and how transparent, and how you share a lot of your experiences. And I know a lot of people can relate and connect with your story. And my favorite quote in your book is when you talk about the phoenix rising from the ashes, talking about the
Mhm.
dark night. Um, that was so powerful. Like the dark night. Like, can you explain
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. I mean, there's so much, it's very mythological, the Dark Knight, and it's so real. And, the Dark Knight is sort of like this place, it's psychological, obviously, but it comes out of the Christian Gospels, I think, the Gnostic Gospels, hundreds of years ago, where, you're walking along and it's sort of like everything falls apart. It's kind of like, your whole life could fall apart. It could be an accident, it could be a divorce, it could be financial collapse. It's usually precipitated by a huge um, emotional feeling of disconnection from the universe. Like, I'm all alone, no one can help me. And it's just a state of, we just feel complete despair. And it happens to all types of people. It can be someone who's a CEO. It can be someone who's on a meditation retreat. It can be a housewife in Iowa, or a college student. It doesn't, it is unpredictable when these episodes happen. And I really, really think that it's sort of a death rebirth. Usually something is dying and something else is reborn after that. And getting through that period can be difficult. I have a YouTube video about aspects of the Dark Night that I published on my YouTube channel just so people could kind of understand if they're going through this. I'm sure some of your listeners are right now, right? And to know that you can get through it it is like a crucible. It feels like you're dying. Sometimes when people are experiencing it, they close their house up and they just lay on their bed in dark rooms. I mean, I hear a lot of stories about that. And in my own experience, they lay really flat, like they're in a cocoon and they're like going through, and sometimes they don't want to eat, or if they do eat, it's like really dead food, right? Sort of mirrors the mind in some way. And and it could be that, there could be several things that you have to let go of, like a relationship could end, so many triggers for it, but it usually marks the ending of something huge. And then if you can stay with it and reach out, and it can be a time that could actually awaken your faith, right? Or it could lead you in a new direction. Out of those dark nights, people usually change their lives in some way. Their lives aren't working. So there's a lot of value in the dark night. You're not falling apart, although a lot of people might go to their doctor and be like, help. And that's okay. You might have to do that for a period of time, but you will come through it. It doesn't last. There's always the dawn, right? And the dawn is like what's being born, what we let go of. And so it's very powerful. It's very archetypal. You can read about it. Jesus talked about this. Other disciples have talked about this, and the Christian mystics, Tibetan Buddhists have talked about this, being in long periods of this kind of energy that it feels like you just have no refuge, no, you've thrown out of heaven or something like that, but you haven't been. It's just a kind of experience that we all go through at some point, some more severe than others. Um, and some many times. I've gone through it a few times. I was like, wow, again? And that's why I guess my book is like that. So I've been there, trust me. And on the other side, and also funny enough, some of my darkest times were also my most creative, where ideas came, and I started acting on them. My organization in Peru was born out of a dark night period that I went through.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. I love it. The phoenix rising from the ashes. Like that is a powerful statement.
That's
Powerful.
yeah,
Powerful.
and we love that in our culture, don't we? We love that more than the underdog, the heroine.
Mm,
I mean, our movies are about that. Our books are about that. We love biographies. I mean, this is kind of hardwired into us.
mm.
We will get through it. And I always have to remind people about that. You will get through this.
There's
I
a
promise
lesson
you.
in everything, right? Like everything that happens, there's a lesson, and I think that's like one of the ways that you can look at it. If like for you, being a favorite of the Buddhist philosophy, there is a lesson in every part of suffering. Like there is something that's going to come out, like that's going to teach you something.
Yeah, and if you can ask that, what is this teaching me? How can I grow? One of the chapters in my book is called School of Life, where I talk about everything is used as a teaching. There are no mistakes. Everything is unfolding lawfully. And I believe because we're growing, and sometimes you have to hit your head on the ground, and it sucks, It's like, why do I have to learn like this? But it's almost like, well, because we won't pay attention any other way. Suffering has one thing that it does do. It forces us to pay attention to things differently,
Mm.
right? It does when you're really, because you can't just go on asleep anymore. It hurts. Something's hurting, right? And we're like, okay, well, what is it? We start. So in some way, I think suffering has that. It forces us to break out of our routine. It forces us to start addressing, that ache in our back, right? Or what's going on? Like, what's not in harmony here? Why is this painful now? Why is this not working? So our unhappiness can be a doorway if we're willing to, be open, which is, challenging.
Open that door.
Open that door. Well, it's scary though. If we're used to running from anything that hurts. So this is a radical leap right here, just saying, hey guys, you can look toward your suffering instead of shut it down, right?
Remember who you are, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, Spring, this has been amazing. How can people connect with you?
Yeah, they can connect with me through my website, springwasham.com. And, you can get the book on there and you can check out other things and events and social media and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, and I just so glad to be a part of this show. And I really love the direction you're going. And it's amazing.
I love our conversation. The connection's great. We're on the same vibe, same vibrations. But to end it, like, what do you want your legacy to be?
I think if there was one thing that I could say was a legacy, it would be something around just compassion, for ourselves and all beings. I think, this second half of my life, using that word, or the next stage of my life, or this next decade, if I look at it like that, it really is trying to help people have compassion for themselves. And then out of that, they will naturally feel it toward others, and awareness does this. Awareness itself grows compassion. Isn't that a beautiful? It's a side effect, which I love. People who meditate a lot naturally feel compassionate. They go, wow, I didn't used to feel like this. Now I'm like noticing the bird on the curb and going here and the kids in my neighborhood. And, they're like, oh no, now what?
I love it.
Yeah, you might notice that. It's like a side effect. So I would want my legacy to be that I was a champion and a practitioner myself of that and helped other people understand that and practice that and, yeah, share that. I think that's it.
I love it. Pick up Spring's book, A Fierce Heart. I read it. Couldn't put it down. It's beautiful. Thank you so much for writing it and putting yourself into it 100%. I think a lot of people are going to connect with it, and I think it's going to help a lot of people.
Yay. Well, that's always the joy of anytime you write something, you hope that it touches someone. So thank you for reading it, finding it, and inviting me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining the show. This has been phenomenal.
I agree.
I want to say thank you to Spring for joining the show. I want to say I apologize for the audio. I totally forgot to turn my mic on during the interview, so Skype just immediately resorted to recording with my laptop mic. So that's why it sounds a little weird, and then I have a space heater in the back. But anyway, you get the picture. It was an amazing conversation, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys got a lot out of it. If you guys want to reach out to me and leave me a message, you can do that by going to yoursuperiorself.com. You can also hit me up on any social media outlet and leave me a message over there if you guys want. But like always, this has been amazing. I thank you guys for downloading. Please leave a rating and review wherever you get your podcast from. Guys, thank you so much. It means so much to me that you guys paid attention this far. All right, guys, I'll talk to you guys later.